The very first day of our travels, we didn't go super far. Made it as far as Kent Island in Maryland. Um, Nice little island, and we found a cool dog park for Cammy to run around in. So that was an enjoyable night. The next day, we continued south and went past Washington, D.C., mostly on the local roads. Stopped over at Fort Washington to check that out. Fort Washington was a really cool fort. Unfortunately, it wasn't open that day, but we did get to walk around outside, and it was a very nice hike. Got to see some beautiful views of the river. It was a nice spot to hike around. That day, we ran into the first person interested in the camper. Got to show it off, give a tour at a rest stop. I always love showing off the camper and how beautiful it turned out, how functional. Exchanged some numbers. They're planning on building their own, and hopefully I can give some advice or tips when they're ready. The next day, we continued south to Richmond, Virginia. That morning, it was 21 degrees when I woke up, so it was very cold. Went to a medical museum there, but it wasn't the most interesting or expansive museum. We did find another dog park, and this one turned out to be super busy despite the cold, so Cammy got a chance to run around and chase and be chased, and that was enjoyable. That was it for that day. The next day we continued down into North Carolina, went to Lexington, got some really good barbecue, and that was wonderful. And then over the weekend I stayed with some family in the Winston-Salem area. It was a beautiful area, and luckily the weather finally got a little bit better. Got up to about 65 degrees over the weekend. So that was nice. Got some sun, enjoyed that. It was a gray and cloudy day, but that's kind of perfect because Congaree National Park is a swamp, and we got to hike on their boardwalk and through their trails. It's all dog friendly. I very much appreciated that. Learned about a new tree called the bald cypress tree, and the roots sort of stick up straight up out of the ground. They grow straight up out of the ground, and so it was very cool because you're walking around in this gray, cloudy day through a mucky swamp, and it looks like there's all these fingers coming up out of the mud to try and grasp at you. Very creepy, very cool. We also learned about a new plant called switch cane, relative of sugar cane, and Cammy kept trying to chew on it. I don't know if it tasted sweet to her or what, but no matter how much I tried to pull her away, she kept trying to eat every bush we walked past. It was very interesting. That night we met another cool person. This guy worked on golf courses his entire life, and so it was very interesting to learn how golf courses are repaired and retrofitted and built, and all the work that sort of goes underneath them and above them and everything that goes on in the world of golf. After that, we continued south on our journey for better weather, and we stopped over in the Savannah area at Fort Pulaski. That was an incredibly cool fort, all built of brick and earth, made sort of between the Revolutionary War and the Civil War, and they finished it sort of just before the Civil War broke out. I believe there wasn't even anybody stationed at it when the Civil War broke out, and so the South immediately took over. Now, the belief when they built this fort was that it was totally indestructible. It was on an island, and all the present guns couldn't reach it and effectively do any damage, not from any of the surrounding land. And the fort obviously had lots of guns to fire back if there were ships trying to attack or land. So it was sort of a wake-up call and sort of changed the face of fort building when the Union finally arrived down there, and they had new cannons which were rifled and had special shells that could go further and faster and hit with more power. And within about 30 hours of bombarding this fort, they had a huge hole in it, and the Confederates had to surrender. So apparently afterwards, everybody realized that these types of forts, this style of building a fort, wasn't going to work with the new types of guns. And then all forts were built with concrete, which is what we see from the World War II era. So it was a very cool fort. There's all sorts of exhibitions and cannons and rooms and things to look through. And we sort of jumped on the tail end of a talk being given by a park ranger in Union uniform. Very interesting, very knowledgeable, ton of information. I would definitely suggest, if you're going to Fort Pulaski, to figure out when they start the talk so you can get the entire thing. It was very cool. On our way out of Fort Pulaski, we had another person interested in the camper. Fortunately, I didn't go through the whole spiel and show it all off because I was getting bombarded by mosquitoes. So I just sort of answered questions as quickly as possible and drove off as quickly as I could. That night we stayed at Fort McAllister, another fort nearby Savannah, and that one's a state park, and also very cool state park, very nice campground, very enjoyable, and the weather was staying good, a little bit rainy, but not cold. So that was excellent. And that was the whole week. I will keep you guys updated on future adventures.